Story 1. Trick or Treat at the Cabin. 2020 was a rough year for my girlfriend and me, as I'm sure it was for most other people as well. By the time October rolled around, we felt like we'd been put through the ringer. Every month had its own brand of chaos. Liz, my girlfriend, must have sensed my stress, because she floated the idea of escaping it all for a bit. She suggested that we go to my uncle's cabin for Halloween. Honestly, I loved the idea. It was in the mountains. No kids banging on the door for candy, no city noise, just peace and quiet. We pulled into the cabin just after sunset. It was beautiful and serene, the kind of view that makes you forget your worries. We quickly unpacked and whipped up some sandwiches. Nothing fancy, but in that moment, with that view, it felt like a 5-star meal. After eating, we sprawled out on the old couch and decided on watching a movie. Liz loved romantic comedies, and I knew this, so before we left, I downloaded a few to my laptop. We cozied up on the couch and let all the stress and anxiety of the past few months melt away. Our relaxing state of bliss would be short-lived, however. We were about halfway through the movie when 3 loud bangs echoed through our cabin. We both jumped, our heads whipping over in the direction of the door. The 3 bangs were followed by a thundering deep voice. "Trick or treat," someone shouted from outside. Liz looked at me, confusion and panic written all over her face. We were in the middle of nowhere. Who the hell would be out here? Trying to keep my cool, mostly for Liz's sake, I headed to the door, expecting to find some lost hikers or something. At least that's what I told myself, probably in an attempt to keep my own nerves in check. I swung the door open, ready to either help or scold, but there was no one, just the dark woods and the sound of crickets. I stepped out, looking around. Nothing. I walked from one side of the porch to the other, scanning the surrounding woods. There was no one, at least no one that I could see. When I returned back inside, Liz was still on the couch, wide-eyed and cloaked in worry. "Maybe we should call the cops," she whispered. I hesitated. "It's probably just some kids playing pranks," I tried to reason, not entirely believing it myself. But deep down, I didn't want our peaceful getaway to turn into a police scene over what might have been a simple joke. Aside from that, it would take the cops hours to get out here, and that's if we could even get cell phone service, which was spotty at best. We settled back in, though the mood had shifted. The movie continued to play, though I believe neither of us were really paying attention to it anymore. As I held Liz and stared at the tiny screen, a soft, persistent scratching sound came from the window to our left. Liz was the first to look over. "What in the hell is that? Do you hear that?" she mouthed. I got up, more annoyed than scared this time, and looked out the window. Nothing. It was like the woods were playing tricks on us. Trying to shake it off, I joked, "Maybe it's a squirrel wanting to join our movie night." But Liz wasn't laughing. In fact, she started screaming. It was piercing, and took me by complete surprise. As I whipped around, she was staring, horrified, at another window. I followed her gaze and my heart dropped. I could see the silhouette of huge, broad shoulders in the window. There was a large man peering in, and whoever it was wearing a terrifying hockey mask. Instinctually, wanting to protect Liz, I darted for the front door so that I could get outside and confront the individual. As it was later revealed to me by Liz, as I bolted out the front door, the figure bolted as well, in the direction of the surrounding woods. As I came around the corner, there was no one, only the sound of heavy footsteps tromping through the woods. For a moment I was torn between what to do. Should I pursue the individual into the woods? What would I do then? I had no weapon or any other means of protection. Not wanting to leave Liz alone, I returned. As soon as I stepped foot back into the cabin, I didn't hesitate. "Get your stuff now, we're leaving," I said to Liz. She didn't hesitate either. She jumped up, put her shoes on, and slammed the laptop shut as I grabbed my keys. We both made a dash for the car and peeled out of there. As we approached town, I finally got a reliable signal and called my uncle. As I detailed what happened, I half expected him to start laughing, claiming it was a Halloween prank or something, but he was adamant that it wasn't him and that he didn't know anything about it. "Should I call the cops?" I asked. "No," he said. "Just come on in and gather yourselves and we'll try to figure out what's going on." And so that's what we did. The next day, I met up with my uncle and we returned back to the cabin to investigate. Liz, understandably, stayed behind. As we walked around the cabin, there were large footprints on the porch and around the windows. "I don't know, my boy," my uncle said to me. "Someone was definitely out here." Months went by, and memories of that night began to fade. One day, though, I got a call from my uncle. "Hey boy, just returned from the cabin," he said. "Found something you might find interesting." My ears perked up as he detailed what he found. "I was up at the cabin doing some scouting for the upcoming hunting season," he said. "About a third of a mile out from the cabin, we found a really old burned-out campfire." He paused for a moment, then continued. "It had an old charred-up hockey mask in it." My blood went cold. To this day, I still ponder about the man in the hockey mask on Halloween night. Who was this person and why was he stalking us? Was he just trying to scare us? To get a good laugh? Or was he waiting for the perfect opportunity to do something more sinister? I may never know, and quite frankly, I don't think that I want to know. Story 2. A Street from Another Dimension. Growing up, Halloween was always the highlight of the year for me. The excitement, the costumes, the free candy. It was a child's dream. But one particular Halloween stands out from the rest, not for the amount of candy I got or the costume I wore, but for the sheer eeriness of an experience I had with my little sister, Lily. I was about 15 at the time, stuck in that awkward phase between childhood and adolescence. Lily was 9, and everything about Halloween still enchanted her. That year, she'd chosen a fairy princess costume, complete with a sparkling tiara and wand. I, on the other hand, opted for a simple zombie costume. Nothing too flashy, but it did the job. Our neighborhood was always a hot spot for Halloween. Houses went all out with their decorations, and the streets were filled with children, their laughter echoing through the air. After a couple of hours of wandering from door to door, our bags were filled to the brim. "We should head home," I suggested, noting the fatigue in Lily's eyes. Wanting to cut our time short, we opted for a shortcut down a street that would shave off a good 7 or 8 minutes from our journey. We made our way there, chatting animatedly about our night. However, as we turned onto that street, something was really off. Gone were the familiar sounds of Halloween. Instead, it was completely silent and still. Every house was dark, not a single porch light on. No jack-o'-lanterns, kids trick-or-treating, no parents, and no cars. It was like a ghost town, literally. We did see one thing, though, and it was terrifying. Standing beneath the dim glow of a single street lamp was a man draped in a pitch-black robe. He was motionless. His face was hidden deep inside a large hood. Lily clutched my arm, her earlier excitement replaced by fear now. "Bubby, who is that? Why are they just standing there?" she asked. I tried to muster up some courage, hoping to reassure her. "It's probably just someone in their costume trying to scare kids for fun," I whispered, though I wasn't convinced of it myself. But the longer we stood there, the more I felt a sense of dread. Why was this street so different from the others? Why was it void of all life except for this one mysterious figure? Lily's voice trembled. "I don't like it here. Let's go back." I nodded in agreement. Without another word, we turned and made our way back to the more familiar, lively streets. We didn't stop until we reached our front door, panting and out of breath. Our parents were in the living room, enjoying a horror movie marathon. We recounted our tale, expecting concern, or at least a bit of intrigue. Instead, they laughed it off, suggesting that our imaginations had gotten the better of us. "It's Halloween, kids. People try to be spooky. That's the whole point," our dad had said, chuckling. The following day, life resumed its normalcy. Still intrigued by the eerie experience from the previous night, I went out to the street in the daylight. Everything seemed ordinary. Cars were driving up and down the road, kids were playing, and people were walking their dogs. The streetlight with the mysterious figure seemed completely normal. I later met a kid that lived on that street. "That's weird," he said. "My friends and I were up and down that street all night. People were everywhere." When he told me that, it just didn't make any sense to me. The next Halloween, however, I remembered that night. With a mixture of curiosity and nervousness, Lily and I decided to visit that street again. To our surprise, it was bustling with activity. Decorated houses, children in costumes, the familiar Halloween ambiance. It was as if the previous year's events had never happened. For years, I pondered over that eerie Halloween night. Did we experience a glitch in reality? Had we stepped into an alternate dimension? The only logical explanation that I could come up with is that the entire neighborhood went dark to play a prank on two kids walking down the street. But even that seems completely unlikely. I may never know the answers. It was the creepiest thing my sister and I had ever experienced. We never experienced anything like it before, and haven't experienced anything like it since.